ya da 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 yum. Hi ya ya da 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 la 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 da 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 la 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 l'chaim ve'livracha. Diddy-dum ba ya diddy-da ya 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 diddy-da la la dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. Ay 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 diddy-da dum bum ba da diddy-da ya ya la la da ya. Hiya bum 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 ba dum bum dee 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 da da la la lam ba da dum. Dee da da dum bum, dee da dum bum, dee da 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 dum. Excuse me. Okay. We come from Shabbos Mevorchim Adar, from the Shabbos that blessed the new month that will begin Tuesday, Wednesday, Rosh Chodesh, new month of Adar. And when Adar comes, the joy begins. So we got to be full of joy, full of simcha. So we are in our mimer, our discourse, Hasidic discourse, learning about Purim, preparing for Purim, and just to be joyful, that's already a preparation. And with that joy, to focus in on the learning, to internalize the teachings. So we want to understand that before the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, there was a separation between heaven and earth. The material world could not be imbued with holiness. Spirituality was something beyond this world, and materiality was of this world. By Matan Torah, by God coming down at Mount Sinai, Moshe Rabbeinu going up the mountain, there was a fusion between the material and the spiritual. That's what occurred. A fusion that now the material world could be imbued with the divine. So today you have tefillin that are imbued with the divine light, and therefore they're holy. And you have to act upon them and deal with them in a holy manner as a result. Because of that holiness that is been imbued in tefillin, a mezuzah, and the like. So that is the way the world is now after the Torah was given. So let's understand this so one second, let me go back. We have the physical, that's the lowness. We have the spiritual, and then we have the fusion of the two. How does that happen? How could you fuse two opposites? So that's the power of God's infinite quality, or Ein Sof. It is the power to fuse two opposites together, which is the general principle. Two opposites can only be fused when there's a higher power than the two that can bring them together. That's a fact in science. That's a fact in human nature. Two ministers of the king, the agricultural minister who wants money to spend and the finance minister who wants to hold on to the money, well, they have two opposite agendas. And they're not going to get along naturally. But before the king, they get along. because there's a power that's greater than the two of them that will unite their forces. That's a metaphor to understand that there's a power, because spiritual, we think, oh, spiritual, that's a, no, spiritual's a creation. Physical's a creation. Spiritual is just a, more lofty creation, more imbued with divine light, but it's a creation. So what we have here is spiritual creation that's beyond, physical creation that's below, and what happened at Mount Sinai, they were fused together. How? Because of God. That now in the physical, we can have the spiritual light that can be infused in it. Okay, now with that we can understand 3 different ways that we could do a mitzvah. 3 different ways, that we can connect to God. Because in the physical object of, let's say, tefillin, that they're holy, you could do that mitzvah in 3 ways. Or any, mitzvah act. There's 3 different approaches. One will be sort of more of a low quality, if you will, a lower level. One will be a more spiritual level, and one will be, spiritual is still yet from the human condition, and therefore it's got a limitation. And then one will be from the divine perspective. L'chaim, l'chaim v'bracha. So, from the lower dimension on how a person can do a mitzvah, like right now we're doing a mitzvah of studying Torah, it could be very simple. We could be accustomed, some of you are accustomed every Sunday, or maybe every day, to come and learn. And it's sort of your second nature now. Coming, learning Chassidus in the morning. You're just accustomed to it. It has become your nature. So it's coming from your nature, the nature of your body and a natural soul, which is the lowness of the person. Now, by the way, that's better that you're doing that, studying, because it's just sort of like second nature to you. It kind of, you've programmed it in. But because it's nature, so it's the lower part of who we are. What's a higher part, a more spiritual part of us? It's that when you do it out of love. You come to learn out of the love of God, the love of learning Chassidus. And the love of, putting on tefillin, the love of prayer to God, right? Not out of, you've been accustomed to do the mitzvah, again, which is the first line, if you will, of connection. But, hey, there's a feeling there. And that's what motivates you to fulfill whatever. God has many mitzvahs, 248 positive commandments. And the only way that you can cleave to God in a real way is through the doing of the mitzvah. So since you love God and you want to cleave to Him, so therefore that brings you to do the mitzvah and to have a love for the mitzvah. Because through it you have that connection, the divine connection. Which is which is beautiful. That's spiritual. That's the spiritual part of the person that is engaged in the mitzvah. Then we have the highest level. That it's not the spiritual part of the person that is motivating you to bring you to do the mitzvah, but it's, and therefore not coming really from the divine soul, right? But from a higher place now, even a greater place, that you fulfill the mitzvah, what's called lishma, for its own sake, not because of the benefit. So when you do it for your soul to cleave to God, that's a benefit. The cleaving to God, then that's, you want a connection, which is wonderful. So be it that, that we have that sentiment, that we have that feeling, we have that awareness that, through this I can cleave to God and connect to God, through this learning Torah right now, through doing we'll get into Torah actually more to understand that. But let's say in the act of the mitzvah, now we're talking more the act of the mitzvah. The act of the mitzvah. So, there is a spiritual benefit of connecting to God, which is wonderful. A higher level is that it's not because of the spiritual benefit that motivates you, but this is what God wants. This is what God wants for me. And I'm there for him. I'm doing it from God's perspective. This is what he needs from me. This is what he wants from me. Right? I'm not even doing it from my soulfulness, because from soulfulness, that's my soul that needs and wants the divine connection. Here, this is even more lofty, because you're doing it from God's perspective. This is what God needs from me. Ooh. So it's not coming from your being. It's not coming from you, even your spiritual being. This is coming that your whole reality, your whole being is only but to serve and to do what God needs from me. Wow. So we can connect this now with 3 dimensions, right? These were 3 dimensions in how we do the mitzvah. We can connect this with 3 dimensions in the purpose of the mitzvah. Okay. And the first dimension of the purpose of the mitzvahs, of God's commandments, right, is in order to refine this world, to cleanse this world, to cleanse ourselves, right? That when you do a mitzvah, there's 248 commands from God, positive commandments. We have 248 limbs and organs of the body. Each mitzvah juxtaposed another. Each mitzvah brings a general refinement to the body, but it brings a specific refinement to the body of one of the organs of the body, one of the limbs of the body, right? And not only that, through me doing the mitzvah, it brings a refinement to the world at large. That, through the act of doing a mitzvah. That's the first level of what a mitzvah is about. Self-refinement, refinement to the world. Pretty lofty, right? That's the lower level, in the sense that it's from the physicality, right? From the physicality of the world. That's what it's doing. The physicality of me, right? And the physicality of the world. Then there's a higher level, is that as it says in Tehillim, in Psalms, King David's Psalms, Magid Dvorav Yaakov Chuk Mishpatav L'Yisrael, that God tells us His thing to do. And He tells us His thing. And His thing that He does, we do. In other words, as it were, metaphorically, I don't know if metaphorically is the right word, but, God gives charity. So guess what? I want to cleave to Him. I want to be like Him. I give charity. God is compassionate. So guess what? God's compassionate. I want to be like God. I'm compassionate. God puts on tefillin, figuratively speaking, not physical boxes of tefillin, of course. But God does the commandment. Guess what? For me to want to cleave to Him, I do the commandment. So where do the commandments come? Because they're really God's, what He does. Like a good parent, that's what God is. A good parent doesn't tell the child, do as I say. A good parent says, do as I do. So God does it. God gives charity. He's giving me charity right now by giving me life. Giving you charity right now by giving you life. Right? And so on and so forth. So I do it in order to be like God, to cleave to Him. That's pretty lofty. That's the spiritual level of the mitzvah. The spiritual level of the mitzvah is that the mitzvah allows us to cleave to God, to be like Him, to do what He does. To do what He does. Which is quite lofty. Now, that's the spiritual side, right? So we have the physical side of the mitzvah is to refine my physicality and the physicality of the world through the act of the mitzvah. The spiritual side is that, right, and that's the intent of the mitzvah. The spiritual side of the mitzvah is to be like God. That's beyond this world. To be like Him, that's the spiritual side. However, even in that, there's a kind of, if you will, a form, a definition, a limitation to the mitzvah. The third level is, it's not the ways of God like we just spoke about, which ways of God are 248, right? 248 positive commandments. That through that we connect to God. So 248 different positive ways, right? Which is, again, amazing. But this higher level is that the mitzvahs are really just the will of God. The will of God that's beyond reason. And therefore, the will of God is equal in all the mitzvahs. 230 positive commandments, 365 negative commandments. There's no distinction. There's no hierarchy. And what we just learned, there's, you can say there's a hierarchy. There's a distinction. There are many paths in how to connect and to be like God, to be divine, right? You can be charitable. You can put on your tefillin. You could, observance of Shabbos, a holiday. They're all different ways to cleave to God. Here, the higher level is they're all the same. It's the will of God. The mitzvah is just simply beyond any rationale, beyond any logic. It is purely the will of God. On this level, you know, it's beyond the human condition and beyond the person. It's just what God wants. When we speak that the mitzvah is there for me to be like God, well, that takes into consideration me rising up into spirit in a spiritual form that's beyond the human condition. That's true, right? The human condition being self-refinement. That was the first level that we spoke about. This level is beyond. Then there's this level that we're talking about, the third level. The mitzvah is just a reflection of divine will, period. And the doer of it is not the object. In the first two levels, the doer of the mitzvah is the objective. From a self-refinement, second one being to be like God, to be divine. This objective, the third level and the highest level, is a complete mental self-effacement, it's totally not about me. It's just the divine will to be expressed. It's not about me. I'm here to fulfill the will of God. Right? On this level, all there is the expression of the divine will that needs to be revealed, that needs to be expressed. One second. Oh boy. And then so, I mean, what does that mean? Even after the fact that there is a command, and therefore there's the me doing the command in the end, right? The whole being of the individual is only to fulfill the will of God. In other words, not about cleaving to God, just to fulfill what God wants. That's already divinity on its own level, not in the spiritual realm, but beyond. All right. I hope that was clear. I hope that was clear. All right, folks, we'll see you shortly.